Carlos Humberto Santana Barragán is an American guitarist, best known as a founding member of the rock band Santana. Born and raised in Mexico where he developed his musical background, he rose to fame in the late 1960s and early 1970s in the United States with Santana, which pioneered a fusion of rock and roll and Latin American jazz. Its sound featured his melodic, blues-based lines set against Latin American and African rhythms played on percussion instruments not generally heard in rock, such as timbales and congas. He experienced a resurgence of popularity and critical acclaim in the late 1990s. In 2015, Rolling Stone magazine listed Santana at No. 20 on their list of the 100 greatest guitarists. In 2023, Rolling Stone named him the 11th greatest guitarist of all time. He has won 10 Grammy Awards and 3 Latin Grammy Awards, and was inducted along with his namesake band into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1998. Santana was born in Autlán de Navarro in Jalisco, Mexico on July 20, 1947. He learned to play the violin at age 5 and the guitar at age 8, under the tutelage of his father, who was a mariachi musician. His younger brother, Jorge, also became a professional guitarist. The family moved from Autlán to Tijuana, on the border with the United States. Carlos' rock and roll career started in the city park, Parque Teniente Guerrero. His mother took him to see the TJs, the pioneer rock and roll band from the city. TJ is a nickname for Tijuana. They were formed by Javier Batis. At the age of 12, Carlos became a roadie and eventually he would join them as a bass player. Bass because Batis was playing guitar. He later left so he could play guitar in another bar band. The TJs and Batis turned Carlos onto blues, especially into T-Bone Walker, Muddy Waters, B.B. King, Chuck Berry, Howlin' Wolf, and James Brown. The Santanas then moved to San Francisco where his father had steady work. In October 1966, Santana started the Santana Blues Band. By 1968, the band had begun to incorporate different types of influences into their electric blues. Santana later said, "If I would go to some cat's room, he'd be listening to Sly, Stone, and Jimi Hendrix, another guy to the Stones and the Beatles, another guy'd be listening to Tito Puente and Mongo Santa Maria, another guy'd be listening to Miles Davis and John Coltrane. To me, it was like being at a university." Around the age of 8, Santana fell under the influence of blues performers like B.B. King, Javier Batis, Mike Bloomfield, and John Lee Hooker. Gabor Szabó's mid-1960s jazz guitar work also strongly influenced Santana's playing. Indeed, Szabó's composition Gypsy Queen was used as the second part of Santana's 1970 treatment of Peter Green's composition Black Magic Woman, almost down to identical guitar licks. Santana's 2012 instrumental album Shape Shifter includes a song called Mr. Szabó, played in tribute in the style of Szabó. Santana also credits Hendrix, Bloomfield, Hank Marvin, and Peter Green as important influences. He considered Bloomfield a direct mentor, writing of a key meeting with Bloomfield in San Francisco in the foreword he wrote to a 2000 biography of Bloomfield, Michael Bloomfield, "If you love these blues, an oral history." Between the ages of 10 and 12, he was sexually abused by an American man who brought him across the border. Santana lived in the Mission District, graduated from James Lick Middle School, and left Mission High School in 1965. He was accepted at California State University, Northridge, and Humboldt State University, but chose not to attend college. Santana was influenced by popular artists of the 1950s such as B.B. King, T-Bone Walker, Javier Batis, and John Lee Hooker. Soon after he began playing guitar, he joined local bands along the Tijuana Strip where he was able to begin developing his own sound. He was also introduced to a variety of new musical influences, including jazz and folk music, and witnessed the growing hippie movement centered in San Francisco in the 1960s. After several years spent working as a dishwasher at TikTok Drive-In No. 2 and busking to pay for a Gibson SG, replacing a destroyed Gibson Melody Maker, Santana decided to become a full-time musician. In 1966, he was chosen along with other musicians to form an ad hoc band to substitute for that of an intoxicated Paul Butterfield set to play a Sunday matinee at Bill Graham's Fillmore Auditorium. Graham selected the substitutes from musicians he knew primarily through his connections with the Butterfield Blues Band, Grateful Dead, and Jefferson Airplane. Santana's guitar playing caught the attention of both the audience and Graham. During the same year, he and fellow street musicians David Brown, bass guitar, Marcus Malone, percussion, and Greg Rowley, lead vocals, Hammond organ B3, formed the Santana Blues Band. Santana's band was signed by Columbia Records, which shortened its name to simply Santana. It went into the studio to record its first album in January 1969, finally laying down tracks in May that became its first album. Members were not satisfied with the release, dismissed drummer Bob Livingston, and added Mike Shreve, who had a strong background in both jazz and rock. Then the band lost percussionist Marcus Malone, who was charged with involuntary manslaughter. Michael Carabello was re-enlisted in his place, bringing with him experienced Nicaraguan percussionist Jose Chepito Arias. Major rock music promoter Bill Graham, a Latin music aficionado who had been a fan of Santana from its inception, arranged for the band to appear at the Woodstock Music and Art Festival before its debut album was even released. Its set was one of the surprises of the festival, highlighted by an 11-minute performance of a throbbing instrumental, Soul Sacrifice. Its inclusion in the Woodstock film and soundtrack album vastly increased the band's popularity. Graham also suggested Santana record the Willie Bobo song Evil Ways, as he felt it would get radio airplay. The band's first album, Santana, was released in August 1969 and became a hit, reaching No. 4 on the U.S. Billboard 200. The band's performance at Woodstock and the follow-up soundtrack and movie introduced them to an international audience and garnered critical acclaim. The sudden success which followed put pressure on the group, highlighting the different musical directions Rowley and Santana were starting to go. Rowley, along with some of the other band members, wanted to emphasize a basic hard rock sound which had been a key component in establishing the band from the start. Santana, however, was increasingly interested in moving beyond his love of blues and rock and wanted more jazzy, ethereal elements in the music. He became fascinated with Gabor Szabo, Miles Davis, Pharoah Sanders, and John Coltrane, as well as developing a growing interest in spirituality. At the same time, Chepito Arias was stricken with a near-fatal brain hemorrhage, and Santana hoped to continue by finding a temporary replacement, first Willie Bobo, then Coke Escovedo, while others in the band, especially Michael Carabello, felt it was wrong to perform publicly without Arias. Cliques formed and the band started to disintegrate, consolidating the interest generated by their first album, and their highly acclaimed live performance at the Woodstock Festival in August 1969. The band followed up with their second album, Abraxas, in September 1970. The album's mix of rock, blues, jazz, salsa and other influences was very well received, showing a musical maturation from their first album and refining the band's early sound. Abraxas included two of Santana's most enduring and well-known hits, Oi Como Va and Black Magic Woman/Gypsy Queen. Abraxas spent 6 weeks at No. 1 on the Billboard chart at the end of 1970. The album remained on the charts for 88 weeks and was certified 4 times platinum in 1986. In 2003, the album was ranked number 205 on Rolling Stone magazine's list of the 500 greatest albums of all time. Well, guitarist Jorge Santana, the younger brother of Carlos Santana and whose guitar riffs on the band Malo's 1972 hit Suavecito transformed the song into a Chicano anthem, has died. Carlos Santana announced his brother's death on his Facebook page Friday. He was 68. We take time to celebrate the magnificent spirit of our beloved brother, Jorge, Carlos Santana wrote. He transitioned unto the realm of light that casts no shadow. The eyes of my heart clearly see him right in between our glorious and magnificent mother Josefina and our father Jose. Jorge Santana died Thursday of natural causes, the family said. Well guys, what are your thoughts? Do tell us. Thanks for watching.